It started with a single photograph left behind on a dusty nightstand. A photograph that shouldn't have existed. A photograph that made a grandmother's heart stop when Claire Reynolds waved goodbye to her twin granddaughters that Friday evening. She had no way of knowing it would be the last time she'd ever see them. The twins, Lila and Sophie, were 8 years old. Identical in almost every way. The same wide, trusting eyes, the same dimple on their left cheek when they smiled. They loved ballet, chocolate chip pancakes, and sneaking into Claire's closet to try on her old pearl necklaces. Their father, Mark Reynolds, had pulled into the driveway with his old silver sedan, tires crackling over the gravel, an eager smile pasted onto his face. Claire had felt an old unease stir inside her, the kind that no amount of time could fully silence. Still, the girls were bouncing with excitement, their weekend with Daddy, just like old times. Claire had kissed their foreheads, handed over their small pink suitcases, and watched as the car disappeared down the winding country road. She waited for Mark's usual text. "Got 'em! All good!" But the text never came. At first, she told herself not to panic. Maybe his phone died. Maybe he was busy entertaining them. Maybe, but when Saturday bled into Sunday without a word, Claire called Mark. Straight to voicemail, she called again. And again, by Monday morning, panic clawed its way up her throat. She called the police. The investigation moved quickly at first. An Amber Alert was issued. Mark's apartment was searched, his workplace questioned, neighbors interviewed. No one had seen them. The security cameras at the gas station 2 blocks from Claire's house captured a chilling image. The twins, sitting in the back seat of Mark's car, waving at the camera, faces pressed to the glass. Mark at the wheel, smiling. After that, nothing. Mark's car was never found, his bank accounts untouched, his phone silent. It was as if the earth had opened and swallowed all 3 of them whole. Weeks turned into months. The search waned. Leads dried up. Tips became cruel hoaxes. Claire refused to move a single thing from the girls' shared bedroom. Their little beds remained perfectly made, stuffed animals lined neatly on their pillows. Their drawings still taped crookedly to the walls, rainbows, castles, 2 smiling girls holding hands. She kept their room exactly as it had been. Frozen in time, every night she sat by their empty beds, whispering their names into the dark, and every night the same haunting thought gnawed at her mind. What if it was her fault? She had seen the signs before anyone else. The flashes of anger in Mark's eyes. The way he would squeeze Lila's wrist too tightly when she tugged at his sleeve. The fake, stretched smiles he gave the world. She had seen it, and yet she had. Handed them over, trusting him, trusting that blood would mean love. Now, blood meant only loss. 5 years passed. Claire aged in ways the mirror couldn't show. Her hair thinned, her back stooped, her hands trembled even when they weren't holding anything. But the grief, the raw, festering grief, remained as sharp as the day they vanished. And then, on a rain-soaked Thursday in November, everything changed. She had been cleaning, not because she wanted to, but because her sister Ruth had begged her to. "You have to live, Claire. You have to try." So she had pulled open the drawers of the girl's old dresser, wiping at the dust, sorting through forgotten socks and hair clips. That's when she found it. A loose board at the back of the bottom drawer, tilted at an odd angle. With trembling fingers, she pried it open. Behind it, tucked carefully in the hollow space, was a photograph. At first, she didn't understand what she was seeing. It was a picture of the twins. But not from before they vanished. They were older, maybe 10, maybe 11. They wore clothes Claire had never seen before. Simple dresses, no logos or brands, homemade almost. Their hair was longer, uncut, and messy. Their faces were thinner, paler, but it was them. They were standing in front of a wooden cabin. Dense trees loomed behind them, and they weren't alone. A figure stood between them. His face was blurred, deliberately scratched out, but his hands gripped their shoulders. Tightly, too tightly. Claire stumbled backward, the photograph fluttering from her hand. Her heart hammered so violently she thought she might faint, because there, in the bottom corner of the photo, written in a child's uneven scrawl, were 4 words. "We are still here." She couldn't breathe, couldn't think. How could this be possible? And then, another chilling thought. Who had put the photo there? Claire hadn't touched that drawer in years. No one had. Not unless... She forced herself to sit down, clutching the photograph, blinking back the tears that blurred her vision. She turned it over. On the back, another message, smaller, almost hidden, in the corner. "Find the oak tree." Claire's mind raced. The oak tree. There were hundreds around here. Old sprawling giants with twisted roots and knotted trunks, but for the twins. There was only one oak tree that mattered, the old one. The one near the abandoned quarry where Claire used to take them for picnics in the summers, where the girls had built fairy houses from twigs and moss, swearing they could hear the little creatures whisper at night. Claire didn't waste a second. She grabbed her coat, the photograph still clutched in her fist, and raced outside. The cold rain slapping against her face, her legs trembling but moving anyway. She drove blindly, her tires skidding on the slick roads, her breath fogging the windshield. Memories flashed before her eyes. Lila laughing as she climbed the low branches, Sophie twirling beneath the leaves. Mark standing nearby, arms crossed, watching with an expression Claire could never quite read. She reached the quarry, her car jolting over the uneven dirt road. There, it was, the oak tree, its massive trunk scarred by time and weather, its gnarled branches reaching out like arms. Claire stumbled out of the car, the photograph pressed to her chest. The ground was muddy, sucking at her boots as she trudged forward. She circled the tree once, twice. Nothing. Just when she thought her heart might break from the weight of it all, she saw it, a small carving, almost hidden among the bark's rough folds. 2 initials, L+S, encased in a crooked heart, fresh, not weathered like old carvings. This was new, her hands shaking. Claire pressed her fingers to the initials, feeling the roughness bite into her skin, and then she noticed it, a slight hollow at the base of the trunk half covered by moss. Dropping to her knees, she scraped at the moss with her bare hands, ignoring the mud soaking into her clothes. There, hidden in the darkness, was a small tin box. Her breath caught in her throat as she pulled it free. The box was cold, the lid rusted but loose. Inside, a folded piece of paper. Claire unfolded it with trembling fingers. It was a map, hand-drawn, a winding path through the woods. Landmarks marked in a child's careful script. Big rock, fallen tree, bridge with no rails, and at the end of the path, 2 words, "Help us." Claire clutched the map to her chest, her knees sinking into the mud. Somewhere, out there, her granddaughters were still alive, still waiting, still hoping, and now they had given her a way to find them. But Claire had no idea that by following the map, she would be stepping into something far darker than she could ever imagine, something that had been hidden, festering, in the shadows all along, waiting for her, waiting for this moment, waiting for her to come. The woods seemed to breathe around her. Every gust of wind whispered through the blackened trees, rattling dead leaves like brittle bones. Claire gripped the map tighter, her flashlight slicing thin beams through the darkness. The first landmark was easy enough to find, the big rock, a jagged mass split down the middle like a gaping wound. Claire recognized it from the old picnics years ago. Lila and Sophie had once tried to climb it, laughing when they slid back down the mossy sides. She swallowed the knot of memories and pressed on, her boots squelched in the mud, twigs snapping beneath her feet. The rain had slowed to a drizzle, but every step was heavy, every breath dragging like sandpaper across her throat. The next sign, the fallen tree. It lay sprawled across the path like a dead giant, roots reaching skyward in a silent scream. Claire had to climb over it, slipping once, her knees grinding into the damp earth. She barely noticed the pain, only the fear. only the need. Each step felt heavier, like the woods themselves were trying to pull her back, to swallow her whole. And then ahead, the bridge with no rails, a rotted plank bridge stretching over a narrow ravine. The water below, black and fast, rushed over jagged stones. Claire hesitated at the edge, her flashlight trembling in her hand. One wrong step, and she'd fall. But the girls were waiting. Somewhere, past this, she could feel it, holding her breath. Claire stepped onto the bridge. The wood groaned under her weight, bowing with every footfall. She moved slowly, carefully. Halfway across, something cracked beneath her. Her heart leapt into her throat. She dashed forward, ignoring the splintered boards sagging behind her. When she reached the other side, she collapsed onto her hands and knees, gasping. But there was no time to waste. The path twisted on deeper into the woods. The trees grew closer. Together here, their twisted limbs clawing at the sky. Claire could barely see the stars. The world pressed down on her. And then she saw it, a small clearing. In the center stood a wooden sign, battered and old, the paint peeling away. "Welcome to Havenwood Camp." Claire's breath hitched. Havenwood, she knew that name. It was an old summer camp, abandoned for decades after a fire gutted the main lodge. Kids had whispered about it for years, stories of ghosts, disappearances. But it was just a story, wasn't it? Claire's steps slowed. The camp buildings loomed ahead. Crooked cabins, their roofs caved in, their windows shattered like broken eyes. A crumbling mess hall slumped against the earth, ivy crawling up its sides like grasping fingers. Everything smelled of rot and rain. Her flashlight caught movement. Claire swung it around, heart hammering, just a raccoon, eyes glowing briefly before it disappeared into the underbrush. She forced herself forward, her pulse thundering in her ears. The map showed a circle drawn around one of the cabins. Cabin 6. Claire found the numbers nailed to the doors. Faded and rusted, some missing entirely. She counted carefully, moving through the skeletal remains of the camp. Cabin 6 was the last one, the farthest from the others, almost hidden by a dense thicket of trees. Its door hung open, creaking on its hinges. Claire stepped inside. The air was thick with mildew and something else. Something sour and metallic that made her stomach turn. Her flashlight swept over broken bunks, splintered wood, long-forgotten sleeping bags, shredded by animals. And then she saw it. In the corner, a small child-sized bed, newer than the rest, covered with a thin blanket. Claire's knees nearly gave out. Someone had been here. Recently. She moved closer, her hand trembling as she reached out and lifted the blanket. Underneath was a worn teddy bear, missing one eye, and stitched along its chest, in clumsy, childish letters, was a name. Lila? Claire pressed the bear to her chest, the tears spilling over now, hot and blinding. They had been here. Her girls had been here. She staggered back, desperate for another sign, another clue. That's when she noticed the wall. Someone had scratched into the wooden planks with something sharp. A nail, maybe, or a knife. Dozens of small marks. Tallies. Counting days. Claire traced her fingers over them, each one a silent scream, a record of time lost. And above the tallies, in the center of the wall, 5 words, carved deep, rough. Angry, he says. "We can't leave," Claire recoiled, the words burning into her mind. Who? Who had kept them here? Was it Mark? Had he survived the disappearance, dragged them into this nightmare? Or was it someone else? Someone worse? A noise shattered the silence, a footstep. Claire spun around, her flashlight beam slicing through the gloom. Nothing, just the creak of the cabin settling, the whisper of wind through the broken windows. But the feeling didn't leave her. She was being watched. Claire backed out of the cabin, clutching the teddy bear, the map crumpled in her other hand. She had to find the next clue, had to keep moving, because if the girls were still alive, they wouldn't have much time, not if whoever had taken them was still out here. Claire stumbled through the camp, following the map's final line, a straight path leading away from the cabins deeper into the woods. The path narrowed, winding between ancient trees. Up ahead, a faint glow. A fire. Claire killed her flashlight, her heart slamming against her ribs. She crept closer, hiding behind a fallen log. The clearing opened before her. A campfire burned in a ring of stones, sending flickers of light dancing across the trees. And, sitting by the fire, was a man. Not Mark, someone else. Older, his face lined and weathered, hair wild around his shoulders. He wore ragged clothes, boots caked in mud. In his hands he held something, a photograph. Claire's photograph, the one she had found hidden in the girl's room. He stared at it, turning it over and over, his lips moving silently. Claire's mind reeled. How did he have it? Was he the one who put it there? The man looked up suddenly, eyes scanning the woods. Claire ducked lower, holding her breath. He stood, tucking the photograph into his coat. Then he walked toward the other side of the clearing, where a narrow path disappeared into the dark. Claire waited until he vanished from sight before creeping forward. The fire crackled, throwing shadows across the ground, and then she saw it, carved into one of the stones surrounding the fire, an arrow pointing into the woods. Claire's hand shook as she turned her flashlight back on, covering the beam with her fingers to dim. She followed the arrow. Branches clawed at her coat, roots tangled around her boots. The woods closed in tighter, darker, and then ahead, a shape, a building, small, crude, a shack almost hidden beneath a thick curtain of vines. Claire crept closer, every instinct screaming at her to run, but she had come too far. She pressed her ear to the door. Silence. Her hand found the handle. Rust flaked off under her fingers. She turned it, slowly. The door swung inward with a groan. Inside, darkness. And then, a faint sound. Breathing, Claire stepped inside, her flashlight sweeping the small, filthy room. 2 mattresses on the floor, chains bolted to the walls, and in the farthest corner, 2 figures. Small, curled up together. Claire's breath caught Lila and Sophie, alive. But before she could move, a hand clamped down on her shoulder, and a voice, low and cold, hissed in her ear. "You shouldn't have come here." Claire froze. The hand on her shoulder tightened, nails digging into her jacket. The voice behind her was gravelly, unfamiliar, but filled with a rage that prickled down her spine like icy needles. Slowly she raised her hands, turning just enough to glimpse him, the man from the fire. Closer now, his face twisted in a snarl, teeth yellow in the dim light. His eyes burned wild and bloodshot. He shoved Claire into the shack, slamming the door shut behind them. The girls stirred, whimpering in the corner. Claire's heart shattered at the sound. "Who were you?" she choked out, voice shaking. The man laughed, a low, bitter sound. "No one you need to know," he spat. "You shouldn't have followed." Claire's mind raced. She needed to stall, to think, to survive. "What do you want from them?" she whispered, forcing herself to stay calm. The man circled her like a predator. "They're mine," he hissed. "Found them fair and square. No one cared about 'em. No one looked." Claire's stomach twisted. This wasn't just a kidnapper. This was someone who had convinced himself of his own lies. "Please," she said, edging toward the girls. "Let me take them. You don't have to do this," he sneered, stepping between her and the twins. "They don't want to leave. They know the rules." The girls clung to each other, their faces gaunt, hollow-eyed. Claire's heart screamed. Every instinct in her body begged her to fight, to tear him apart, to grab them and run. But she had to be smart. She glanced around, searching. The shack was small but cluttered. A broken chair, rusted tools, a heavy iron stove. Her flashlight flickered over the floor, catching on a crowbar. Lying half-hidden beneath a pile of rags, close, too close to him. Claire swallowed hard. The man paced, muttering under his breath, words she couldn't understand, rituals, promises, rules. She realized with a jolt, he wasn't just unstable, he was delusional. He believed he was protecting them, keeping them from some unseen threat. Claire took a small step back, feigning fear. He smirked, enjoying it. "Good girl," he muttered. "You'll learn too." Another step, closer to the stove. She needed a weapon. Anything. Her fingers brushed against a rusted poker leaning against the side. The man turned his back for a second, checking the chains on the wall, murmuring to himself. Claire moved. Fast, she grabbed the poker and swung with all her strength. It caught him across the back. A sickening thud echoing in the tiny room. He roared in pain, spinning toward her. Claire swung again, aiming higher. The poker slammed into his shoulder, knocking him sideways. He crashed into the broken chair, splinters flying. Claire didn't wait. She lunged for the girls, tearing the chains free from the wall. Lila and Sophie were light, frighteningly so, their wrists bruised and raw. Claire scooped them up, whispering urgently, "We're getting out. Now." The man groaned, struggling to his feet. Claire kicked the door open, shoving the girls ahead of her. The woods swallowed them instantly. Branches whipped at her face, the ground sucking at her boots. She didn't care. She ran. The girls stumbled, but Claire yanked them upright, pushing, pulling, dragging them forward. Behind them, a roar of fury. Footsteps crashing through the underbrush. Claire didn't look back. She couldn't. The path twisted wildly, roots clawing at their ankles, thorns tearing at their clothes. But ahead, a glimmer. Lights, faint but real. Claire's heart soared. The road. She could almost taste freedom, but then a shadow lunged from the trees. The man, his hand closed around Claire's arm. Yanking her backward, she screamed, the girls crying out. The poker clattered from her hand. They struggled, thrashing in the mud. Claire fought like a wild animal, scratching, kicking, biting, but he was stronger. He shoved her down, pinning her to the ground. His hands closed around her throat, squeezing. Black spots danced at the edges of her vision. Claire's fingers scrabbled for anything. A rock, a stick, anything. Her hand closed around something hard. Without thinking, she swung it up. The man howled, clutching his face. Blood poured from his nose. Claire gasped, dragging air into her burning lungs. She scrambled up, grabbing the girls again. The road was just ahead. She could see headlights now, bobbing closer. A car. Someone was coming. Claire burst from the trees, waving her arms frantically. A pickup truck skidded to a stop, its brakes screaming. A man jumped out, shouting. Claire couldn't even form words. She shoved the girls toward him, collapsing onto the gravel. Behind her, the kidnapper staggered from the woods. The driver took one look and pulled a shotgun from his truck. The man froze. The fight drained out of him like water. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder. The kidnapper turned and bolted back into the woods, but it didn't matter. Help was here. Claire sobbed, clutching the girls to her chest. They were safe. They were alive. The world blurred into a haze of flashing lights, shouting voices, strong arms lifting them into safety. Later, at the hospital, Claire sat between Lila and Sophie, holding their hands tightly. Doctors buzzed around them, checking vitals, asking gentle questions. The girls barely spoke, trauma carved deep into every wordless glance. Every flinch, Claire promised herself they would heal, no matter how long it took, no matter what it cost. They were a family again, and nothing would tear them apart. But as the girls drifted into an exhausted sleep, a detective approached Claire, his face grave. "We ran a background check on the man who took them," he said quietly. "His name's Edgar Hale, local drifter, history of mental illness, no known connection to your family." Claire frowned. Then how did he know where to find them? The detective hesitated. "We think someone may have led him to them." Claire's blood turned to ice. "What do you mean?" He pulled a small evidence bag from his pocket. Inside was a torn scrap of paper, faded, but still legible. A note written in Mark's handwriting. "Havenwood Camp. They're safest there. Keep them hidden. I'll find you when it's safe." Claire stared, the room spinning around her. Mark. Mark had sent them to that place. Not by accident, by design. He hadn't been a victim. He had planned it. The detective touched her shoulder gently. "We'll keep digging, but it looks like your ex-husband was involved." Claire clutched the sleeping girls tighter. The world she thought she knew crumbled around her. And in the ashes, only one truth remained. The real danger hadn't just been the man in the woods. It had started much closer to home. The night stretched endless around Claire as she sat by the girls' hospital beds, the glow of the monitors casting a pale, flickering light across their faces. She couldn't sleep, couldn't close her eyes without seeing Mark's handwriting burned into her mind. Keep them hidden. What had he been hiding them from? Or who? The detective's words gnawed at her, each new question more horrifying than the last. Had Mark set this all in motion? Had he chosen to leave them with that monster? Claire squeezed Sophie's tiny hand. The girl stirred but didn't wake, lost in a restless, shallow sleep. Outside, rain hammered against the hospital windows. The world felt heavy, suffocating. She needed answers. Now. Claire rose, moving quietly. The nurses gave her sympathetic nods as she slipped down the hallway, heart pounding. The detective had left his card. Claire called him from the lobby, pacing under the harsh fluorescent. "Lights." He answered on the first ring. "Claire, you all right?" "No," she whispered. "I need to know everything, about Mark, about what you found." There was a pause. Then, "Meet me at the station. There's something you should see." The station was grim, cold. Claire sat across from the detective in a cramped office, files stacked around them like crooked towers. He slid a folder toward her, thick, heavy. Claire opened it with trembling fingers. Photographs, documents, letters, and all of it pointed to one horrifying conclusion. Mark hadn't been the loving father he pretended to be. He'd been involved with something dark, a group, a network, trading secrets. Trading people? Claire's stomach turned. Her fingers brushed across a photo, grainy, black and white, of Mark standing beside men in suits, their faces obscured. In the background, children, small, vulnerable. She looked up, voice hoarse. "What is this?" The detective leaned forward, voice low. "We believe it was a covert ring. They called themselves the Havenwood Circle, operated under the guise of protecting special children. But it was a lie. They exploited them, hid them away, sometimes worse." Claire's blood ran cold. Mark had been one of them. The camping trip with the girl, the sudden custody battle. It all made a terrible, twisted sense now. Mark hadn't lost custody by accident. He'd been trying to reclaim them for the Circle. Claire fought the urge to vomit. "How did Edgar fit in?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. The detective flipped through the file, pulling out a mug shot. Edgar Hale, eyes wild, smile cracked and broken. He was a failed recruit, used to be part of their inner circle until he went rogue. They banished him. We think he stumbled across Mark's plans and acted on his own. Claire's mind reeled, layers of betrayal stacking higher and higher. Mark, the Circle, Edgar, her girls, caught in the crossfire. She clutched the folder, a surge of rage cutting through the numbness. "They have to pay," she said. The detective nodded grimly. "We're building a case. But it's deep. They cover their tracks well." Claire slammed the folder shut. "Then I'll help you dig." Back at the hospital, dawn crept in through the windows, bleeding pale gold across the beds. The girls were awake now, sitting up, clutching cups of juice in shaking hands. Claire forced a smile. "Hey, babies." They blinked at her, hollow-eyed. But Sophie's voice broke through the silence. "Daddy said you wouldn't find us." Claire knelt between their beds, heart breaking anew. "Daddy lied," she whispered. "I will always find you." Lila leaned in, whispering something in Sophie's ear. They exchanged a glance, a silent language only twins seemed to know. Then Lila reached under her blanket, pulling out something clenched tightly in her fist. A locket. Old, tarnished. Claire frowned. "Where did you get that?" Lila shrugged, eyes wide and fearful. "Daddy gave it to us before the woods." Claire took it gently. The metal was cool against her palm. Inside, tiny pictures. Mark and another man, not Edgar, someone older. His face twisted in a cruel smile. Claire's stomach lurched. There was an inscription, small, etched so faintly she almost missed it. "For the future we protect." Chills skittered up her spine. The Circle? She knew it in her bones. The locket was proof, real, tangible proof tying Mark to the larger network. But why had Mark given it to the girls? A warning? A threat? Or something else? Claire sat back heavily. Girls watched her with wide, broken eyes. "I'm going to keep you safe," Claire said, voice fierce. "Promise?" Sophie whispered. Claire nodded, tears burning her throat. "Promise." But deep inside, fear gnawed at her. If the circle was as powerful as the detective claimed, finding Edgar was only the beginning. There were others, waiting, watching, and Claire had just declared war. That night, as the girls slept, Claire sat alone at the kitchen table, the locket spinning slowly under the lamplight. She studied the faces inside, Mark, and the stranger. She needed to find him, expose him, but where to start? The file the detective had given her lay open beside her. Names, dates, places. Claire's finger traced a date circled in red, March 14th, 2010. The same weekend Mark had taken the girls camping. The same weekend they disappeared. Next to the date, a location scrawled hastily, Havenwood Retreat. Claire's pulse quickened. She grabbed her laptop, searching the name. The results were sparse. A few old articles about a religious retreat for special families. Closed now, abandoned, shrouded in rumors of malpractice and abuse. Claire's stomach turned, but there was one address listed, deep in the woods, 30 miles from town, the same woods where she found the shack. It couldn't be a coincidence. She had to go there. Tomorrow. She'd take the detective if she had to. But something in her gut twisted uneasily. Waiting might be too dangerous. The circle wouldn't sit still for long. Not now. She had the locket, the proof, and they would come for it. Claire glanced at the clock. 13 a.m. The house creaked around her. The rain outside had stopped, leaving a terrible, suffocating silence. Then, a knock at the door. Claire froze. Another knock. Harder this time. The girls stirred upstairs, murmuring. Claire rose silently, heart hammering. She crept to the window, pulling the curtain aside just enough to see. A car idled in the street. Black, tinted windows, unmarked. Claire's breath caught. Another knock, pounding. Now. "Claire Winters," a voice called through the door. Low, commanding, "We need to talk." Claire backed away, instincts screaming. This wasn't the police. This wasn't help. She had to protect the girls. Grabbing the locket, she slipped it into her pocket and raced upstairs. Lila and Sophie sat up, blinking sleepily. "Stay quiet," Claire whispered, scooping them into her arms. The knocks turned into fists, hammering against the wood. Claire ducked into the attic, heart slamming against her ribs. Below, the door splintered. Footsteps pounded into the house. Claire held her breath, clutching the girls against her. They were here. The circle had found them, and this time they weren't going to ask nicely. Claire's lungs burned as she crouched in the attic's darkness, arms wrapped tight around the girls. Below, heavy footsteps thundered through the house. Furniture scraped, doors slammed, men shouting low to each other, coordinated, efficient. This wasn't random. This was a recovery mission. They were here for Lila and Sophie. Claire pressed a finger to her lips, signaling the girls to stay silent. Tears gleamed in their wide eyes. The attic was cramped, filled with old furniture and dusty. Boxes. The only exit was a narrow hatch back to the hallway. Now crawling with strangers. Claire's mind raced. The locket. They wanted the locket. If she gave it to them, would they leave the girls alone? Or was this bigger than that? Downstairs, a new voice echoed, chillingly calm. "Claire, we don't want to hurt anyone, but we will get what we came for." A pause, then a threat wrapped in a velvet voice. "You have 30 seconds." Claire's heart thudded painfully. She glanced around the attic. An old window, small, maybe just big enough. If she could lower the girls outside. If she could buy them a few minutes. She moved quickly, barely daring to breathe. The window groaned as she pushed it open. Cold night air rushed in, carrying the scent of rain and damp earth. Far below, the backyard stretched in darkness. Claire whispered into Lila's ear, "Hold on to the vine. Slide down. Don't let go until you feel the ground." Lila nodded bravely, swallowing a sob. Claire kissed her forehead and helped her through the window. The vines clung to the siding. Unstable, rotting, but it would have to do. Lila slid out of sight, small hands clinging desperately. Claire turned to Sophie, lifting her up. Footsteps boomed on the stairs. They were coming fast! Claire pushed Sophie through the window just as the attic hatch burst open. A blinding flashlight beam stabbed into the darkness. There! Claire didn't think. She grabbed a rusted crowbar from the pile of junk and swung wildly. The first man crashed back with a grunt. Claire darted to the window. Sophie was almost down. Claire swung one leg over the ledge. A hand grabbed her ankle, yanked. Hard. Claire fell, slamming against the frame. Pain exploded up her side. The locket tumbled from her pocket, skittering across the attic floor. The man cursed, scrambling after it. Claire seized her chance. She kicked free and dropped out the window, landing hard in the mud below. Agony shot up her legs, but she forced herself up. Lila and Sophie clung together nearby. Terrified, Claire grabbed their hands. "Run!" she gasped. They fled across the yard, crashing through wet underbrush, shoes slipping in the muck. Behind them, shouts rang out. Flashlights slashed through the night. A bullet whizzed past Claire's. Here, snapping a branch overhead, she tightened her grip on the girls. Faster! They plunged into the woods, branches whipping their faces, feet pounding through the sucking mud. Claire's lungs burned. Her side screamed with every step, but she didn't stop. Couldn't. The trees swallowed them, thick and tangled. Somewhere in the distance, sirens wailed. Hope flared. Maybe the detective had realized. Maybe help was coming. Claire dragged the girls deeper into the woods until their pursuers' voices faded to angry echoes. Only then did she allow herself to collapse against a tree, gasping for air. The girls flung their arms around her, trembling. Claire held them tight, safe, for now. They found a road an hour later. A lone car appeared, headlights cutting through the mist. For one terrifying moment, Claire froze. What if it was them again? But the car screeched to a halt, and Detective Raines burst out, weapon drawn. "Claire!" Relief nearly crushed her. She staggered forward, the girls clutching her coat. Raines hustled them into the car. "Jesus," he breathed, slamming the door shut and locking them. "What happened?" he demanded, peeling away from the curb. Claire shook her head, fighting back tears. "They found us," Raines swore under his breath. "They're getting desperate." Claire touched her pocket instinctively. Empty, the locket. Gone. Her heart twisted. "They have the locket," she said. Voice hollow, Raines grimaced. "We'll find another way." But Claire wasn't so sure. The locket was their proof, their leverage. Without it, it would be her word against shadows, and the circle would erase every trail, every whisper, every trace, just like before. Claire slumped back against the seat. Cradling the girls against her, they were safe. That was what mattered. Everything else could burn. In the days that followed, the world shrank to hospital rooms and police interviews. The media caught wind of the story, missing twins found alive after years. They hounded the hospital steps, demanded interviews, asked invasive questions. Claire refused them all. The girls needed peace, healing, a new start. Detective Raines worked tirelessly behind the scenes, assembling what case he could. Some arrests were made. Low-level recruits, scared men who sang quickly. But the circle's true leaders vanished like smoke, gone underground. The house stood abandoned now, a hollow memory. Claire returned once, standing in the ruined living room. Bullet holes pocked the walls. Broken glass glittered on the floor. The echoes of that night lingered in every shadow. She found the attic hatch ajar. The locket, gone, of course. But tucked into a crack in the floorboards, she found something else, a scrap of paper. Small, handwritten, a single line. "They are not safe." No signature, no explanation. Claire stared at it for a long time. Was it a warning, a threat, or a plea? She didn't know, and maybe she never would. She crumpled the paper and shoved it deep into her pocket. Then she turned and walked away. Months later, Claire sat on a sun-drenched porch swing, the twins playing in the yard. Lila laughed as Sophie chased her with a butterfly net. both of them barefoot and muddy, normal, happy free. Claire closed her eyes, letting the sounds of their laughter wash over her. But even in peace, the fear lingered, the knowledge that somewhere out there, in the dark spaces of the world, the circle still watched, still waited, and they would never truly stop hunting. Claire would never let her guard down, not again, not ever. She wore a chain around her neck now, a small silver pendant. Inside it, tucked safely away, was a photo of Lila and Sophie. A promise, a shield. They were hers to protect always, no matter what it cost, no matter who came for them, and if the circle ever returned. Claire would be ready, because a mother's love wasn't something you could steal. It wasn't something you could break. It was a weapon, and it would be the circle's undoing. But somewhere, far away, in a hidden room deep beneath a crumbling estate, a man watched a screen flicker to life, 2 girls laughing in a sunny yard, a woman, fierce, vigilant, watching from the porch. The man smiled thinly, turned to the shadows behind him, and whispered, "Soon."